The small town of Willow Creek had never seen anything quite like the Chen family. When they moved from San Francisco 3 years ago, whispers followed them everywhere. Mrs. Chen walked with her head held high, her designer handbag clutched tightly, while her husband quietly ran the new Asian fusion restaurant on Main Street. But it was their daughter Lily who truly caught everyone's attention. At 24, she had flowing black hair that caught the sunlight, warm brown eyes that sparkled when she laughed, and a smile that could light up any room. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital, where patients loved her gentle touch and kind words. The problem was Mrs. Chen's iron grip on her daughter's life. Every Sunday after church, the family gathered at the restaurant for their weekly meeting. Mrs. Chen would sit at the head of the table, reviewing Lily's schedule like a military commander planning a battle. "You will focus on your career," Mrs. Chen would say firmly. "Marriage can wait. And when the time comes, it will be to someone suitable, someone who understands our culture, our values, our way of life." Lily would nod quietly, but her friends could see the sadness in her eyes. She watched other young women in town fall in love, get engaged, start families. Meanwhile, she spent her evenings alone, reading medical journals or helping at the restaurant. The townspeople felt sorry for her. At the grocery store, elderly women would pat her arm sympathetically. "Such a sweet girl," they would whisper to each other. Shame about her mother being so strict. Mrs. Chen didn't care about the gossip. She had moved her family to this small town for safety and opportunity, but she wasn't about to let American customs destroy what she saw as proper Chinese traditions. In her mind, love marriages were risky. Arranged marriages, or at least carefully guided ones, were safer. Americans divorce too easily, she would tell her husband in Mandarin. They follow their hearts instead of their heads. Our daughter deserves better than that kind of uncertainty. Mr. Chen usually stayed quiet during these conversations. He loved his wife, but sometimes he wondered if they were being too hard on Lily. He saw how she looked at young couples walking hand in hand downtown. He noticed how she quickly changed the channel when romantic movies came on television. One evening, as Lily helped clean the restaurant after closing, her father approached her carefully. "Are you happy, my daughter?" he asked in English, glancing around to make sure his wife wasn't listening. Lily paused, holding a damp cloth in her hands. For a moment, her careful mask slipped, and her father saw the loneliness she had been hiding. "I'm grateful for everything you and Mother have given me," she said softly. "That's not what I asked," Mr. Chen said gently. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. "I understand Mother's concerns. I really do. She wants to protect me, but sometimes I wonder what it would be like to choose for myself, to fall in love naturally like other people do." Mr. Chen's heart ached for his daughter. He remembered his own youth in China, where his marriage to Mrs. Chen had been arranged by their families. It had worked out well. They had grown to love each other deeply. But times were different now, and they were in America. Perhaps, he said carefully, there could be a middle path. Some guidance, but also some choice. Lily looked at him hopefully, but they both knew Mrs. Chen would never agree to such a compromise. She had made her position clear many times. No dating, no romantic relationships, and definitely no marriage until she approved of the man. The next day brought unexpected visitors to the restaurant. A group of ranchers came in for lunch, their boots muddy from the morning's work. They were regulars, always polite and appreciative of the food. But today, one of them lingered after the others left. Jake Morrison was 32 years old and stood 6 feet 4 inches tall. His family had owned the largest ranch in the county for 3 generations. He had sun-weathered skin, calloused hands, and the kind of steady blue eyes that seemed to see everything. He was also quietly watching Lily as she moved between tables and had been for months. "Excuse me, miss," he said as Lily approached his table with the check. His voice was deep and gentle. "I was wondering if you might have time to talk sometime. Maybe over coffee?" Lily's heart jumped, but she glanced nervously toward the kitchen where her mother was cooking. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I don't really date." Jake nodded, understanding but disappointed. "Well, if you ever change your mind, I'll be around." Unknown to both of them, Mrs. Chen had heard every word from the kitchen doorway. Her face darkened with anger and determination. This was exactly what she had been afraid of. Some local cowboy thinking he could court her educated, cultured daughter. That evening, Mrs. Chen called a family meeting earlier than usual. Her voice was sharp as she addressed Lily directly. "I heard what happened at the restaurant today," she said. "This is exactly why we must be careful. These American men think they can just walk up and claim whatever they want." "Mother, he was just being polite," Lily protested quietly. "Polite?" Mrs. Chen's voice rose. "He was being presumptuous. And I'm telling you right now, before this goes any further, no one marries my Chinese daughter unless I say so. Especially not some cowboy who probably can't even pronounce your real name correctly." The room fell silent. Mr. Chen looked uncomfortable, while Lily stared at her hands, her cheeks burning with embarrassment and frustration. But outside the restaurant window, Jake Morrison was walking past after picking up supplies in town. He had heard Mrs. Chen's raised voice through the thin walls, and every single word of her declaration had reached his ears. Instead of walking away in defeat like most men would have done, Jake stopped on the sidewalk. His jaw set with quiet determination, and something sparked in his blue eyes. He had been raised to respect his elders and honor family traditions, but he had also been raised to stand up for what was right. Tomorrow, he decided, he would come back to the restaurant. And this time he wouldn't just be asking Lily for coffee, he would be addressing her mother directly, in a way that would either earn her respect or make it clear that some things were worth fighting for. Jake Morrison didn't sleep much that night. He sat on his front porch looking out over the rolling hills of his ranch, thinking about what he had heard through the restaurant window. The anger in Mrs. Chen's voice echoed in his mind, but so did the sadness he had glimpsed in Lily's eyes. His grandmother's words came back to him from years ago. "Respect is earned, not demanded, boy. And sometimes you have to show people who you really are before they can see past their own fears." The next morning, Jake did something unusual. Instead of his typical work clothes, he put on his best jeans, a crisp white shirt, and his good boots. He combed his hair carefully and even trimmed his beard. Then he drove to town, but not directly to the restaurant. First, he stopped at the library and checked out 3 books about Chinese culture and history. Then he visited Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who taught Mandarin at the community college. She was surprised to see the tall rancher at her door. "Jake Morrison," she said with a smile. "What brings you here?" "Mrs. Patterson, I need to learn some basic Mandarin phrases. Respectful ones. Can you help me?" She raised an eyebrow but invited him in. For 2 hours, Jake practiced pronunciation and memorized key phrases. Mrs. Patterson was impressed by his dedication and quick learning. "Might I ask what this is for?" she inquired as he prepared to leave. "I need to have a conversation with someone's mother," Jake said simply, "and I want to show proper respect." Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Mrs. Chen was still fuming from the previous day. She watched Lily work with eagle eyes, ready to pounce if any other young men approached her daughter. Mr. Chen tried to calm his wife during their lunch break. "Perhaps we are being too harsh," he suggested gently. "Lily is a grown woman. She has good judgment." "Good judgment?" Mrs. Chen snapped. "She's too kind, too trusting. These American men don't understand commitment. They see a pretty face and think that's enough for marriage. But what if this man is different? What if he truly cares for her?" Mrs. Chen shook her head firmly. "It doesn't matter. He's not Chinese. He doesn't understand our ways. He would take her away from us, make her forget who she is." At that moment, the restaurant door chimed and Jake Morrison walked in. He moved with purpose but also with visible respect. Removing his hat immediately and bowing slightly to Mrs. Chen. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Chen," he said clearly, then added in carefully pronounced Mandarin, "I hope you are well today." Mrs. Chen's eyes widened in surprise. She hadn't expected this cowboy to speak even a word of her language. Lily looked up from wiping tables, equally shocked. Jake continued in English, his voice steady and respectful. "Mrs. Chen, I would like to request a few minutes of your time to speak with you properly. I understand that yesterday I may have approached your daughter in a way that seemed disrespectful to your family." The restaurant was quiet except for the soft sizzling from the kitchen. Mrs. Chen studied Jake's face, looking for signs of mockery or insincerity. She found none. "You speak Chinese," she said cautiously. "Only a few phrases, ma'am. I spent this morning learning them because I wanted to show you proper respect. I know that in Chinese culture a man should address the parents before pursuing their daughter." Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly, though she remained guarded. Sit, she said, gesturing to a table near the back of the restaurant. Jake sat down, placing his hat carefully on the table. Mrs. Chen took the seat across from him, while Mr. Chen emerged from the kitchen, curious about this unexpected conversation. Lily continued working but strained to hear every word. "What do you want with my daughter?" Mrs. Chen asked directly. "I want to get to know her better," Jake replied honestly. "I've been coming to this restaurant for months and I've watched how she treats people. She's kind to everyone, the elderly customers, the children, even the difficult ones. She works hard, she's educated, and she has a beautiful spirit. You think because she is pretty that is enough? No, ma'am. Beauty fades. Character doesn't. Your daughter has both, but it's her character that drew my attention first." Mrs. Chen leaned back in her chair, studying him. "You know nothing about our culture. Nothing about what it means to be Chinese." "You're right," Jake admitted, "but I'm willing to learn. I checked out books from the library this morning. I spoke with Mrs. Patterson about language lessons. I don't expect you to trust me immediately, but I'm hoping you'll give me a chance to prove that I'm serious about understanding what's important to your family." This wasn't what Mrs. Chen had expected. She had prepared for arguments, for dismissive attitudes, for the kind of casual arrogance she associated with American men who thought they could have whatever they wanted. She hadn't prepared for humility and genuine effort. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why go to this trouble?" Jake glanced toward Lily, who was pretending to organize menus while listening intently. "Because I think your daughter is extraordinary, and because I believe that love, real love, means respecting where someone comes from, not trying to change them." Mr. Chen stepped forward from where he had been quietly observing. "What do you do for work, young man?" "I run a cattle ranch, sir. It's been in my family for 3 generations. We raise beef cattle and grow hay. It's honest work and it provides well. Family business," Mr. Chen nodded approvingly. "This is good, stable." Mrs. Chen shot her husband a warning look, but Jake continued speaking. "Mrs. Chen, I understand your concerns about American men and marriage. You're right that many people here don't take commitment seriously enough. But my grandparents were married for 62 years. My parents have been married for 38 years. In my family, marriage is a lifetime promise. And what about children?" Mrs. Chen asked. "Would you expect my daughter to give up her Chinese heritage? To raise children who know nothing of their mother's culture? I would expect our children to know both sides of their heritage," Jake said firmly. "Chinese and American. I think children are richer when they understand multiple cultures, don't you?" For the first time, Mrs. Chen looked genuinely surprised. This was not the conversation she had imagined having. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. "Mrs. Patterson helped me write this," he said, handing it to Mrs. Chen. "It's my promise to you in Mandarin." Mrs. Chen unfolded the paper and read the carefully written characters. It said, "I promise to honor your daughter, your family, and your traditions. I ask only for the chance to prove myself worthy of your trust." The restaurant remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Mrs. Chen looked up at Jake with a mixture of skepticism and grudging respect. "This is very unusual," she said slowly. "Yes, ma'am, it is," Jake agreed. "But then your daughter is very unusual too. She deserves someone who's willing to be unusual for her." Mrs. Chen stared at the paper in her hands for what felt like an eternity. The carefully written Mandarin characters represented something she had never encountered before. An American man making a genuine effort to understand and respect her culture. It challenged everything she had believed about Western attitudes toward Chinese traditions. "You wrote this yourself?" she asked, though she could tell from the precise strokes that he had not. "Mrs. Patterson helped me with the characters," Jake admitted. "But the words are mine. The promise is mine." Lily had abandoned all pretense of working and was standing frozen near the kitchen door, hardly daring to breathe. Mr. Chen moved closer to the table, clearly intrigued by this unexpected turn of events. Mrs. Chen folded the paper carefully and placed it in front of her. "Learning a few phrases does not make you understand Chinese culture," she said, but her tone was less harsh than before. "You're absolutely right," Jake said. "That's why I'm not asking you to trust me today. I'm asking you to let me prove myself over time. What exactly are you proposing?" Jake took a deep breath. He had thought about this carefully during his sleepless night. "I'm proposing that you get to know me as a person before you make any final decisions. Let me come to dinner at your home. Ask me questions. Test my sincerity. If after getting to know me you still feel I'm not suitable for Lily, I'll respect your decision and step back. Mrs. Chen's eyes narrowed. And what about my daughter? Does she have a say in this arrangement? For the first time, Jake looked directly at Lily. Only if she wants to. I would never pursue someone who wasn't interested. All eyes turned to Lily. Her face was flushed and her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a dish rag. The moment she had dreamed of and dreaded was finally here, a chance to speak for herself about her own future. She began, then stopped. Years of obedience warred with a growing sense of her own desires. I would like to get to know Mr. Morrison better, she said quietly but clearly. Mrs. Chen's lips pressed into a thin line. Her daughter had just publicly contradicted her authority, something that would have been unthinkable in traditional Chinese families. Yet they were in America now, and even Mrs. Chen could see that complete control was becoming impossible. This is highly irregular, she said sternly. Yes, ma'am, Jake agreed, but maybe irregular isn't always bad. Mr. Chen cleared his throat. Perhaps we could invite Mr. Morrison to dinner this Sunday, he suggested carefully. After church. A proper family meal where we can all get acquainted. Mrs. Chen turned to her husband, surprised by his support for this idea. You approve of this? I approve of giving an honest man a fair chance, Mr. Chen replied. He has shown more respect for our family in 10 minutes than most young men show in months. Mrs. Chen looked around the table at her husband's hopeful face, her daughter's anxious expression and Jake's patient waiting. She felt the weight of tradition pulling her in one direction, and the reality of their American life pulling her in another. One dinner, she said finally. Sunday at 6 o'clock. You will dress appropriately. You will bring a proper gift for the hosts, and you will answer any questions I ask you, no matter how personal. Yes, ma'am, Jake said, relief evident in his voice. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Do not thank me yet, Mrs. Chen warned. I will not make this easy for you. Jake stood and picked up his hat. I wouldn't expect you to, Mrs. Chen. Your daughter is worth fighting for. He bowed slightly to both parents, then looked at Lily. Miss Chen, I look forward to Sunday. After Jake left, the restaurant remained quiet for several minutes. Finally, Mrs. Chen turned to her daughter. You understand what has just happened? She asked. I think so, Lily replied cautiously. I have agreed to meet with this man, but that does not mean I approve of him. You are not to see him alone before Sunday. You are not to make any commitments or promises. This is simply an evaluation. I understand, Mother. Mrs. Chen studied her daughter's face and saw something she hadn't noticed before, a spark of hope and excitement that had been missing for years. It reminded her of her own youth, of the butterflies she had felt when first meeting Mr. Chen, even in their arranged circumstances. That evening, Mrs. Chen called her sister in San Francisco. Mei Lin, she said in Mandarin, I need your advice about something. What's wrong? You sound troubled. Mrs. Chen explained the day's events from Jake's unexpected visit to the dinner invitation. Her sister listened without interruption. So this cowboy speaks Mandarin? Mei Lin asked when the story was finished. A few phrases, but he learned them just to show respect. And he asked your permission before pursuing Lily? Yes. And he wants to learn about our culture instead of expecting her to abandon it? So he says. There was a long pause before Mei Lin spoke again. Sister, do you remember what it was like when we first came to America? How lonely we felt? How hard it was to fit in? Of course, Lily was born here. This is her home. Maybe it's time to consider that her happiness might look different from what we planned. Mrs. Chen frowned. You think I should approve of this man? I think you should keep an open mind. Love that crosses cultures can work. Look at the Wongs down the street from me. Their daughter married an Italian man, and their grandchildren speak 3 languages. After hanging up, Mrs. Chen sat in her kitchen, thinking about her sister's words. She had spent so many years protecting Lily from what she saw as the dangers of American dating culture, that she hadn't considered there might be American men who could honor Chinese values. Meanwhile, across town, Jake was on the phone with his own mother. Mom, I need to know everything about proper dinner etiquette for a Chinese family. Oh, honey, his mother said with delight. Are you finally bringing home a nice girl? Maybe, but first I have to survive dinner with her parents, especially her mother. Well, what do you need to know? Everything. Gift-giving customs, table manners, conversation topics to avoid, how to show respect without looking like I'm trying too hard. His mother was quiet for a moment. Jake, you've never asked for this kind of help before. This girl must be really special. She is, Mom, she really is. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching Mrs. Chen's mood as she prepared for the evening's dinner. She had spent the entire week planning a menu that would test Jake's willingness to try unfamiliar foods while showcasing the complexity of Chinese cuisine. Mr. Chen watched his wife's nervous energy with amusement. "You're more anxious than Lily," he observed. "I am not anxious," Mrs. Chen replied, adjusting the table setting for the third time. "I am thorough." "He seems like a good man," Mr. Chen said gently. "We will see," Mrs. Chen replied. But privately, she was beginning to wonder if her first impressions might have been too harsh. At 5:30, Jake Morrison stood outside his truck in the Chen family's driveway, holding a carefully chosen bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine, rehearsing Mandarin greetings one more time. He had no idea that inside the house, 3 generations of tradition were about to meet the American frontier spirit, and that the evening would change all their lives forever. Jake Morrison stood at the Chen family's front door at exactly 6 o'clock, his heart beating faster than it had since his first rodeo competition 15 years ago. He wore his best navy suit, polished black boots, and carried a bouquet of white lilies along with a bottle of wine that the shop owner had assured him was appropriate for dinner with Chinese hosts. When the door opened, it wasn't Lily who greeted him, but Mr. Chen, dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark slacks. "Mr. Morrison," he said with a slight bow, "welcome to our home." "Thank you for having me, Mr. Chen," Jake replied, returning the bow and switching to his practiced Mandarin. "It is an honor to be invited to your family table." Mr. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly at the Chinese greeting, and he smiled for the first time since Jake had met him. "Please come in." The Chen home was modest but elegant, with traditional Chinese artwork hanging alongside family photographs. The dining room table was set with fine china, and the smell of complex spices filled the air. Mrs. Chen emerged from the kitchen wearing a beautiful silk blouse and black pants, her hair arranged in an elaborate style that made her look younger and more approachable. "Mrs. Chen," Jake said, presenting the flowers with both hands as Mrs. Patterson had instructed. "These are for you with my gratitude for your hospitality." Mrs. Chen accepted the flowers, and Jake could see her examining them carefully. Lilies were significant in Chinese culture, representing summer and abundance, and his choice hadn't been accidental. "Lilies," she said quietly, "like my daughter's name." "Yes, ma'am. I thought that was appropriate." For just a moment, Mrs. Chen's stern expression softened. "Please sit down. Dinner is almost ready." Lily appeared from the kitchen carrying a steaming bowl of rice, and Jake's breath caught. She wore a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes, and her hair was pulled back with small silver clips. When she smiled at him, he felt like the luckiest man in Wyoming. "Good evening, Miss Chen," he said formally, standing until she was seated. "Good evening, Mr. Morrison," she replied, but her eyes sparkled with warmth. Mrs. Chen began bringing out dishes: sweet and sour pork, kung pao chicken, mapo tofu, steamed fish with ginger, and several vegetable preparations Jake didn't recognize. The spread was impressive and clearly designed to test his willingness to try unfamiliar foods. "This looks incredible," Jake said sincerely. "I've never seen such a beautiful meal." Mrs. Chen sat down and began serving. "You may not like everything," she warned. "Chinese food is quite different from American food." "I'm looking forward to trying everything," Jake replied. "I believe you can't truly know a culture without experiencing its food." As they began eating, Mrs. Chen watched Jake carefully. He tried every dish without hesitation, asked polite questions about ingredients and preparation methods, and genuinely seemed to enjoy most of what he tasted. When he encountered the spicy mapo tofu, his eyes watered slightly, but he finished his portion without complaint. "Too spicy?" Mrs. Chen asked with what might have been the hint of a smile. "It's perfect," Jake said, reaching for his water glass. "Just more flavorful than I'm used to." Mr. Chen laughed. "Even I cannot eat that much mapo tofu at once." As the meal progressed, the conversation became more natural. Jake asked about the Chen family's journey from China to San Francisco to Willow Creek. He listened attentively as they shared. Stories about leaving everything familiar behind and starting over in a new country. It must have been incredibly difficult, he said. I can't imagine having that kind of courage. We did what we had to do, Mrs. Chen replied, for our daughter's future, and now she's a nurse helping people every day. You must be very proud. Mrs. Chen's expression warmed noticeably. She is a good daughter. She works hard, respects her family, thinks of others before herself. Those are rare qualities, Jake agreed, glancing at Lily, who blushed at the praise. After dinner, Mrs. Chen brought out tea and small almond cookies. This was when the real interrogation began. Mr. Morrison, she said, settling back in her chair, tell me about your family. Jake had expected this question and answered honestly. He talked about his grandparents who had homesteaded the ranch, his parents who had expanded it and diversified their operations, and his own education in agricultural business at the state university. You have brothers? Sisters? One younger sister. She's a teacher in Denver, married with 2 children. And your parents? They are still alive. Yes, ma'am. They live in the house next to mine on the ranch. My father is semi-retired, but he still helps with the business decisions. Mrs. Chen nodded approvingly. Keeping elderly parents close was important in Chinese culture. What are your intentions toward my daughter? She asked directly. Jake set down his teacup and looked Mrs. Chen straight in the eye. I would like the opportunity to court her properly, with your family's knowledge and approval. If she's willing, I'd like to take her to dinner, maybe to a movie, show her around the ranch. I want to get to know her better and let her get to know me. And if this courtship leads to serious feelings, then I would ask for your blessing before proposing marriage. Mrs. Chen was quiet for a moment. You understand that my daughter is Chinese American? That her children would be mixed race? Yes, ma'am. And I think any children we might have would be incredibly fortunate to inherit the best of both cultures. What about religion? We are Buddhist. Jake had researched this too. I was raised Christian, but I respect all faiths. I believe what matters most is living with kindness and integrity, regardless of the specific path you follow. Mrs. Chen exchanged a glance with her husband. These were not the answers she had expected from a cowboy. One more question, she said. Why my daughter? Why not one of the American girls in town? Jake was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Mrs. Chen, I've dated other women, but I've never met anyone like Lily. She has a grace and kindness that comes from being raised with strong values. She's intelligent and educated, but she's also humble. She treats everyone with respect, from the richest rancher to the poorest patient at the hospital. When I watch her work, I see someone who truly cares about making the world better. He paused, then continued. But honestly, I think what draws me most to her is that she's genuinely herself. She hasn't been shaped by American dating culture or the pressure to be something she's not. She's authentic in a way that's become very rare. Lily was staring at her hands, overwhelmed by Jake's words. No one had ever described her so thoughtfully. Mrs. Chen stood up abruptly. I need to think about this, she announced. Mr. Morrison, thank you for dinner. Lily will walk you to your truck. Outside in the cool evening air, Jake and Lily walked slowly toward his pickup truck. The moon was full, casting silver light across the quiet neighborhood. I'm sorry if that was difficult, Lily said softly. My mother means well, but she can be very protective. She should be protective, Jake replied. You're precious to her. To your whole family. They reached his truck and stood facing each other in the moonlight. Jake wanted to take her hand to pull her close, but he respected the boundaries Mrs. Chen had set. What do you think she'll decide? He asked. Lily smiled, and for the first time all evening she looked truly relaxed. I think you surprised her tonight. In a good way. I hope so. Because Lily, everything I said in there was true. I think you're extraordinary. Even if my mother says no? Jake looked at her seriously. If your mother says no, I'll respect that decision. But I'm hoping she'll give us a chance. As Jake drove away, Lily stood in her driveway watching his taillights disappear. Inside the house, she could hear her parents talking in rapid Mandarin. She couldn't make out all the words, but the tone seemed more thoughtful than angry. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring Mrs. Chen's verdict. And for the first time in her life, Lily Chen was hoping her mother might be willing to trust her heart. Monday morning came too slowly for Lily and too quickly for Mrs. Chen. Neither woman had slept well, both turning over the previous evening's dinner conversation in their minds like prayer beads. At the restaurant, the atmosphere was tense. Mrs. Chen moved through her morning preparations with mechanical precision, while Lily kept glancing toward the front windows, hoping to catch a glimpse of Jake's truck. Mr. Chen wisely stayed in the kitchen, letting the women work through their thoughts without interference. Around 10 o'clock, the bell above the door chimed and Jake walked in. He looked tired, as if he too had spent a sleepless night, but he approached the counter with quiet determination. "Good morning, Mrs. Chen," he said respectfully. "I wanted to thank you again for last night's dinner. It was wonderful." Mrs. Chen looked up from the register, studying his face. "You are welcome," she said carefully. "I also wanted to give you this." Jake handed her a small wrapped package. "I forgot to bring it last night." Mrs. Chen unwrapped the gift slowly, revealing a beautiful jade bracelet in a traditional design. Her breath caught slightly. Jade was precious in Chinese culture, symbolizing protection and good luck. The bracelet was clearly expensive and had been chosen with great care. "This is too much," she said quietly. "It's a token of respect for you and your family," Jake replied. "Mrs. Patterson helped me pick it out. She said jade represents wisdom and grace, which reminded me of you." For a moment, Mrs. Chen's composure cracked, and Jake could see the emotions warring in her expression. The gift was perfect. Respectful without being presumptuous, valuable without being showy, culturally appropriate without trying too hard. "Mrs. Chen," Jake continued, "I know you're still deciding about Lily and me. I want you to know that whatever you decide, I respect your authority as her mother. But I also want you to know that my feelings for your daughter are genuine and serious." Mrs. Chen held the jade bracelet up to the light, watching it catch the morning sun. "Feelings change," she said softly. "Yes, ma'am, they do. Sometimes they fade and sometimes they grow stronger. I can't promise you that my feelings will never change. But I can promise you that if you give us a chance, I'll treat Lily with the respect and care she deserves, whether our relationship lasts 1 month or 50 years. From across the restaurant, Lily watched this exchange with her heart in her throat. Her mother's face was unreadable, but she was still holding the jade bracelet, turning it over in her hands. "Lily," Mrs. Chen called suddenly, "come here." Lily approached nervously, standing beside Jake but not too close. Mrs. Chen looked at both of them for a long moment. "I have been thinking all night," she said slowly, "about tradition, about protection, about what is best for my daughter." She paused, slipping the jade bracelet onto her wrist. "I have decided that Mr. Morrison may take you to dinner this Friday evening. One dinner. To see how you conduct yourselves together." Lily's face lit up with joy while Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen," he said earnestly. "I won't disappoint you." "You will have her home by 9 o'clock, Mrs. Chen continued firmly. "You will treat her with complete respect, and you will remember that this is not a commitment. It is a trial." "Yes, ma'am, I understand completely." Mrs. Chen turned to her daughter. "And you, Lily, will remember your upbringing. You will conduct yourself with dignity and propriety." "Yes, mother," Lily said, barely able to contain her excitement. After Jake left to return to his ranch work, Mrs. Chen found herself alone with her thoughts once again. She touched the jade bracelet on her wrist and wondered if she was making the right decision. Her sister's words echoed in her mind. Maybe it's time to consider that her happiness might look different from what we planned. That afternoon, word of Mrs. Chen's decision spread through the small town like wildfire. The waitress at the diner mentioned it to a customer, who told her neighbor, who shared it at the post office. By evening, half of Willow Creek knew that the strict Chinese mother had agreed to let the Morrison boy court her daughter. At the ranch, Jake threw himself into his work with renewed energy. He fixed fence posts, checked on the cattle, and helped his father with the accounts, but his mind kept drifting to Friday evening. He wanted everything to be perfect for Lily's first real date. Wednesday brought unexpected visitors to the Chen house. Mrs. Chen's sister Mei Lin arrived from San Francisco with her teenage daughter, Jenny. Mrs. Chen had called her after making her decision, needing family support during this uncertain time. "Auntie," Lily exclaimed, hugging her aunt warmly. "What are you doing here?" "Your mother called and said she needed reinforcements," Mei Lin said with a smile. "I wanted to meet this cowboy who has everyone so worked up." Jenny, 16 and thoroughly Americanized, was thrilled by the romantic drama. "Lily, is he really tall and handsome like Mom said? Does he actually wear cowboy boots?" "Jenny!" her mother scolded, but she was smiling too. That evening, The extended family gathered around the dinner table, and Mrs. Chen found herself defending her decision to let Jake court Lily. "You were always the most traditional one," Mei Lin observed. "I'm surprised you're allowing this." "He is not what I expected," Mrs. Chen admitted. "He shows proper respect. He tries to understand our culture and—" She paused, fingering the jade bracelet. "He makes Lily happy in a way I haven't seen since she was a child." "What does father think?" Mei Lin asked, glancing at Mr. Chen. "I think Jake Morrison is a good man," Mr. Chen said simply. "I think our daughter could do much worse and probably not much better." Friday arrived with unseasonable warmth for October. Lily spent the entire day in a state of nervous excitement, changing outfits 3 times before settling on a simple green dress that brought out her eyes. Mrs. Chen watched her daughter's preparations with a mixture of anxiety and nostalgia, remembering her own youth and the butterflies that came with new romance. At exactly 6 o'clock, Jake arrived at the Chen house wearing a dark suit and carrying a small bouquet of flowers for Lily. He had chosen a restaurant in the next town over, wanting to give them privacy for their first real conversation without the entire population of Willow Creek watching. "Good evening, Mr. Morrison," Mrs. Chen said as she opened the door. "You look very handsome." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. Is Lily ready?" When Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, Jake felt his breath catch. She looked beautiful, but more than that, she looked happy and free in a way he had never seen before. "You look lovely," he said softly, as she reached the bottom of the stairs. "These are for you," he added, presenting the flowers with a slight bow. "Thank you," Lily said, her cheeks flushing pink. "They're beautiful." Mrs. Chen watched this exchange with careful eyes, but she had to admit that Jake's manners were impeccable. He helped Lily with her coat, opened doors for her, and spoke to her with genuine warmth and respect. 9 o'clock, Mrs. Chen reminded them as they prepared to leave. "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied. "I'll have her home safely." As they drove toward the restaurant, Jake and Lily finally had their first opportunity to talk privately. The conversation flowed easily. They discussed her work at the hospital, his life on the ranch, their shared love of books, and their dreams for the future. "I have to ask," Jake said as they waited for their dinner to arrive. "Are you doing this because you want to, or because your mother finally gave permission?" Lily smiled, stirring her tea thoughtfully. "Both, I think. I've been watching you for months too, you know. Every time you came into the restaurant, you were polite to everyone, not just me. But the busboy, the other customers, even Mrs. Henderson when she complained about everything. Mrs. Henderson is harmless. She's just lonely since her husband died. See? That's exactly what I mean. You see people clearly, but you're kind about it." They talked until the restaurant began to empty around them, lost in the joy of finally being able to speak freely. Jake told her about his dreams of expanding the ranch's sustainable practices, while Lily shared her hopes of eventually becoming a nurse practitioner. "Your mother was right to be protective," Jake said as they prepared to leave. "You are special, Lily. Any parent would want to make sure you were treasured." When Jake walked Lily to her front door at 8:55, they stood facing each other in the soft porch light. The evening had exceeded both their hopes, and neither wanted it to end. "Thank you for tonight," Lily said softly. "It was wonderful." "Thank you for giving me a chance," Jake replied. "Would you like to do this again?" "I'd like that very much." Jake reached out and gently took her hand. "Then I'll ask your mother's permission for a second date." As Lily went inside, she found her mother, aunt, and cousin waiting in the living room, clearly eager for details. "Well?" Mrs. Chen asked, trying to sound casual. Lily smiled, a glow of happiness radiating from her face. "It was perfect, Mother. He was perfect." Mrs. Chen felt something tight in her chest finally begin to loosen. For the first time since this whole situation began, she started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had made the right choice. Outside, Jake sat in his truck for a moment before driving away, replaying every moment of the evening. He was falling in love with Lily Chen, and for the first time in his life he could envision a future that included marriage, children, and the kind of deep partnership his grandparents had shared. Tomorrow he would ask Mrs. Chen's permission for a second date, and if he was very lucky, there would be many more to follow. 3 months later, the entire town of Willow Creek had grown accustomed to seeing Jake Morrison's truck parked outside the Chen restaurant every Friday and Sunday evening. What had started as a tentative courtship had blossomed into something deeper and more beautiful than anyone had expected. Mrs. Chen had given permission for Jake and Lily to see each other twice a week, always with specific times and conditions. But as the weeks passed, even she had to admit that Jake was proving himself to be everything he had promised. He brought flowers for Lily and small gifts for Mrs. Chen. He helped Mr. Chen fix a broken freezer at the restaurant without being asked. He even started attending Mandarin lessons with Mrs. Patterson, determined to eventually speak with Mrs. Chen in her native language. On this particular Sunday evening in January, the Chen family had invited Jake to stay for dinner after his date with Lily. It had become a weekly tradition, and Mrs. Chen actually looked forward to these meals. Jake always brought interesting stories from the ranch, asked thoughtful questions about Chinese customs, and made her daughter laugh in ways that lit up the entire room. "Jake," Mrs. Chen said as they finished their meal, "I have been thinking about something." Jake looked up attentively. Over the months, he had learned that when Mrs. Chen said she had been thinking about something, it usually meant an important conversation was coming. "Yes, ma'am?" "Next month is Chinese New Year. It is the most important holiday in our culture, a time for family, for honoring ancestors, for setting intentions for the year ahead." "That sounds wonderful," Jake said sincerely. "I'd love to learn more about it." Mrs. Chen exchanged a meaningful glance with her husband. "We would like to invite you to celebrate with us, but this is not just a dinner invitation. If you accept, you would be joining our family celebration as someone important to Lily." The weight of this invitation settled over the table. Jake understood that Mrs. Chen was offering him something precious, acceptance into the most sacred of family traditions. "Mrs. Chen," he said carefully, "I would be deeply honored to celebrate Chinese New Year with your family. But I want you to know that I don't take this invitation lightly. I understand what you're offering me. Do you?" Mrs. Chen asked quietly. "You're telling me that you trust me with your daughter's heart, and with your family's traditions?" Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. "That is exactly what I'm telling you." Lily reached across the table and touched Jake's hand, her eyes shining with tears of joy. Mr. Chen smiled broadly, clearly pleased with his wife's decision. "There is one more thing," Mrs. Chen continued. "Chinese New Year is also a time for important announcements, for sharing news about the future." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. He had been thinking about the future constantly lately, but he hadn't expected Mrs. Chen to bring it up so directly. "I understand," he said quietly. "Good," Mrs. Chen said, standing to clear the dishes. "Then we will see what the new year brings." After Jake left that evening, Lily helped her mother clean up while Mr. Chen read in his chair. The comfortable silence was broken by Mrs. Chen's thoughtful voice. "Lily, are you happy?" Lily paused in drying a dish, surprised by the directness of the question. "Yes, Mother. Very happy. Do you love him?" "Yes," Lily said without hesitation. "I love him very much." Mrs. Chen nodded, as if confirming something she already knew. "He loves you too. It shows in everything he does, the way he looks at you, the way he speaks about you when you're not there, the way he has worked so hard to understand our family. Does that worry you?" Mrs. Chen considered this carefully. "It used to. I was afraid that love would make you forget who you are, where you come from. But watching you with Jake, I see that his love makes you more yourself, not less." 2 weeks later, Jake made a special trip to the jewelry store in the city, 3 hours away. He had been researching engagement ring traditions in Chinese culture and wanted to find something that honored both his and Lily's heritage. The jeweler helped him design a ring with a classic solitaire setting, but incorporated small jade accents in a traditional Chinese pattern. When Chinese New Year arrived, the Chen house was transformed. Red decorations hung everywhere, symbolizing good fortune and joy. The smell of traditional foods filled the air: dumplings, whole fish, sweet rice cakes, and Mrs. Chen's special noodles for long life. Jake arrived with his arms full of gifts, including a traditional red envelope with money for good luck, a practice Mrs. Patterson had taught him. "Jake!" Jenny exclaimed as he entered. She and her mother had returned from San Francisco for the celebration. "You look so handsome in that red shirt." Jake had chosen his clothes carefully, wearing red for good fortune and gold for prosperity as Mrs. Chen had instructed. He bowed to each family member in turn, presenting gifts and offering New Year greetings in his improving Mandarin. As the evening progressed, The family shared stories, played traditional games, and enjoyed the elaborate feast Mrs. Chen had prepared. Jake participated in everything with genuine enthusiasm, asking questions about the meaning behind each tradition and sharing stories about his own family's customs. As midnight approached, Mrs. Chen stood at the head of the table with a glass of wine. In Chinese tradition, she announced, the new year is a time for hope, for new beginnings, and for important family decisions. She looked directly at Jake, who felt his pulse quicken. Jake Morrison, you have proven yourself to be a man of honor, respect, and genuine love for our daughter. You have shown that love can cross cultures without erasing them. Jake stood up, his heart pounding. He had planned to wait until after the celebration, but Mrs. Chen's words seemed to be opening a door he couldn't ignore. Mrs. Chen. Mr. Chen, he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. This past year has been the happiest of my life, thanks to your daughter and your family's acceptance of me. He turned to face Lily, who was watching him with wide, hopeful eyes. Lily, you have changed everything for me. You've made me want to be a better man, to build a life that honors both where I come from and where you come from. Jake dropped to one knee beside her chair, pulling out the carefully chosen ring. The room fell completely silent. Lily Chen, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me that celebrates both our cultures, raises children who know their full heritage, and honors the love that brought us together? Lily's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, of course, yes. As Jake slipped the ring onto her finger, the room erupted in celebration. Mr. Chen clapped Jake on the back. Jenny squealed with delight, and Mei Lian wiped tears from her eyes. But it was Mrs. Chen's reaction that mattered most. She approached the newly engaged couple with tears in her own eyes and pulled Jake into an unexpected embrace. Welcome to our family, son, she said quietly in English, then switched to Mandarin to add words that made Jake's eyes widen with surprise and joy. What did she say? Lily asked, laughing through her tears. Jake looked at Mrs. Chen with deep gratitude and love. She said that sometimes the best traditions are the ones we choose to create together. As the family continued their celebration into the early hours of the new year, Mrs. Chen reflected on how much had changed since that day when she had declared that no one would marry her Chinese daughter. She had been wrong, she realized. It wasn't that no one could marry Lily. It was that only the right person could. Someone who would love her completely while honoring where she came from. Jake Morrison, the tall rancher with patient blue eyes and a willing heart, had proven himself to be exactly that person. 6 months later, the wedding of Jake Morrison and Lily Chen became the social event of the year in Willow Creek. The ceremony beautifully blended Western and Chinese traditions, with vows spoken in both English and Mandarin, red and white decorations throughout the church, and a reception that featured both country music and traditional Chinese performances. Mrs. Chen walked down the aisle wearing a stunning red silk dress and the jade bracelet Jake had given her, her head held high with pride. She had learned that love, like the best dishes, was sometimes created by combining different ingredients in unexpected ways. And as she watched her daughter dance with her new husband under a sky full of stars, Mrs. Chen knew that she had been wrong about many things, but right about the most important one. Her daughter deserved to be treasured. Jake Morrison would spend the rest of his life making sure that happened.